Please forward my mail to New Orleans, Atlantic. I mean, New Atlantis, Louisiana. I mean, that graveyard we abandoned where survivors were left to scavenge for scraps in the aftermath of levee damage, but 3 years later, we pull $700 billion out of our asses. I want to learn government magic. How to turn streetcars into surfboards. How to bury every dream in the muddy streets of the Ninth Ward. How to steal from people so poor they couldn't even afford to evacuate when they were warned about the storm. Tell me, is it still wrong to bite the hand that feeds me if that hand forces bullshit down my umbilical cord? All over the world, children were being born into snow globes of hope, while others were dying in the Superdome, but that's not what they showed. I was told those people murdered and stole when the truth was my fellow kings and queens were using their thrones as boats to float above the city they call home, and I learned that the hard way. Riding the metaphorical waves of a poet that drank that rain, I think I finally went sane at the front doors of Tulane. I'll take the 504 over the 405 any day. So I left LA the city for LA the state. Goodbye, angels. Hello, saints. Okay. So, hey, y'all. It's Cece. That's my poem. I'm about to do a breakdown. First off, reason I look like crap. It is 10:30 at night, and I have tons of crap to do. So I figure if I look like crap, I won't go out, and I'll get the crap that I have to do done. Anyways, but the point is, I'm about to do a breakdown of my poem. I've been wanting to put that full poem on because, as you guys may have noticed, LA to LA is another video if you want to go check it out. And I took lines from that poem to make that video. If you want to go check out that video, comment, rate, I'd really appreciate it. Let me know what you think. So basically, please forward my mail to New Orleans, Atlantic. New Orleans was covered in the Atlantic Ocean. New Atlantis, Louisiana. This is where so much is. Like, when this place is flooded, and when I say is, because it currently gets flooded. It doesn't get flooded like Katrina, granted, but we flood pretty easily. That's gold underwater. That is a civilization of ridiculous intelligence and art and mathematical genius. This architecture is intensely fascinating. So this is Atlantis in Louisiana. The graveyard we abandoned where survivors were left to scavenge for scraps in the aftermath of levee damage. Let's break this down first. The graveyard we abandoned. I know we heard a lot of talk about Bush doesn't like black people and all the black people that were hurt by this. But what it comes down to, as far as numbers go, people. Oh, you know what? I just read this essay for class. So I'm going to give you guys some quotes from it. I know we've heard a lot about this being about black people. The Herald in Glasgow, Scotland reported that the poorest groups have lived in the low-lying areas which have been devastated by Katrina. New York Times said that it is not a coincidence that many of those hard-hit low-lying areas have had poor and predominantly African-American residents. USA Today reported that the low-lying wards that suffered the worst damage were mostly black neighborhoods. A local activist commented that the black people only moved to low-lying Gentilly and eastern New Orleans because all the good high ground had been taken. The journal World Watch drew attention toward the article Race and the High Ground in New Orleans with the subheadline Poor and Black equals low, wet, and maybe dead. First off, all my people in LA. New Orleans is tiny. Tiny. It was only one area that was hit. Seriously. Like, there's so many. Slidell, Gentilly, Metairie, all right here. Did not get any attention. Just want to put that out there. New Orleans is so tiny. But, yeah, New Orleans is also not all black. Hurricane Katrina actually, quote, 2 breaches opened on the Industrial Canal, sending a torrent of water into the mostly black Lower Ninth Ward and predominantly white St. Bernard Parish. This is a people thing. This is a people thing. You know, as far as this death toll goes, sorry, getting back on topic, talking about the line, that graveyard we abandoned, where survivors were left to scavenge for scraps in the aftermath of levee damage. Whites made up 51% of the pre-Katrina metropolitan population and 31% of its flood victims. Blacks made up 44% of the population pre-Katrina, 65% of Katrina's victims. Asians made up 2.6 and 2.3 respectively. Hispanics made up 5 and 3 respectively. Basically, black people were the only ones, first off, made up most of the Katrina flood victims, making up 65% of the flood victims, first and foremost. Secondly, they're the only group that made up more percentage of victims than they did of the population pre-Katrina. That is where these quotes come from. That's where this it's a black people thing comes from. But I want to point out, they're not the only people that were hurt. But as far as numbers go, over 400,000, this was a graveyard. This was a graveyard. People were dying. People were dead in this city and left here for days. The people who did survive were left here for days on their roofs. Flood water to their roofs. People died in their attics. 3 years later, we pull $700 billion out of our asses. I don't think I need to explain that. Out of our asses, I want to learn government magic. How to turn streetcars into surfboards, how to bury every dream in the muddy streets of the Ninth Ward, how to steal from people so poor they couldn't afford to evacuate when they were warned about the storm. Clearly, people wanted to evacuate and could not sometimes. Could not. Is it still wrong to bite the hand that feeds me if that hand forces? I'm sure we've all heard the quote, is it still wrong to bite the hand that feeds me? It's wrong to bite the hand that feeds you. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. I'm on a full scholarship, 4 years full tuition paid. That's $40,000 a year. I can't let that keep me from putting in work. Basically, gotta hustle hard. Period. All over the world, children were being born into snow globes of hope. We're born in these little snow globes. Even at Tulane, we live in these little bubbles of happiness. But children died in that Superdome once the storm ended and they went to look for safety. They went to look for shelter. They went to the Superdome. Thousands of people were in the Superdome. And we play our football games in the Superdome. It's not that big. Yes, it's big. It's not big enough for a city to live in. And people were living in their filth, struggling to find food and water, dying. Like, major health issues. The hospital was evacuated to the Superdome. My fellow kings and queens were using their thrones as boats to float above the city they called home. I learned that the hard way. Writing the metaphorical words of a poet that drank that rain, I definitely came to appreciate New Orleans much more at BNV when I met the New Orleans Youth Slam team. Just put that out there. Shout out to Noise. But I think I finally went sane at the front doors of Tulane. Take the 405, which you might know is a freeway in LA. I'll take the 504, which is the area code for the New Orleans. A lot of people who rep the 504 strong, so I'll take the 504 over the 405 any day. So I left LA the city, Los Angeles, forever the state, Louisiana. Goodbye Angels, Anaheim Angels, City of Angels, however you want to look at it. Hello Saints, who are 8-0 right now. Just wanted to say that. So that's that. First video of my really busy night. Hope you enjoyed it. Yeah. Bye.